Good afternoon. My name is Ashley Lopez, and I'm the volunteer coordinator for today's forum.
My name is Onase Omayeni. I am the senior class vice president.
We want to thank the Concord Carlisle League of Women Voters for choosing Lowell High School to host this forum and giving our students, many of whom will be voting this November, the opportunity to learn more about the candidates and why they hope to represent us.
This forum is in part sponsored by the League of Women Voters, a nonpartisan political organization for men and women which encourages active participation in government and is part of their ongoing voter education efforts to help make voters make an informed decision this November 8th. This forum is also sponsored by Lowell Votes, Lowell Educational Television, WCAP AM Radio, and Lowell High School. We would like you to also help us welcome our distinguished guests, Robin Desmond, Interim Assistant Superintendent of Curriculum, Instruction and Assessment for Lowell Public Schools, and Superintendent of Lowell Public Schools, Dr. Salah Kalfawi.
We hope that over the course of this program, you will learn more about the candidates and what they hope to do for the 3rd Congressional District. Now I'd like to welcome to the stage Cynthia Rainey, President of the Concord Carlisle League of Women Voters, for some opening remarks.
Thank you.
Welcome. They did a wonderful job. I'm going to repeat pretty much everything they said, so bear with me. I'm Cynthia Rainey, President of the League of Women Voters of Concord Carlisle. Welcome to the 3rd Congressional District Forum, a chance for voters to learn more about the candidates running. I want to thank the candidates for participating and all of you for attending. I also want to thank Lowell Votes, Lowell High School, Lowell Public Television, and especially the students that are here with us today. The League of Women Voters encourages the informed and active participation of citizens in government, studies public policy issues, and influences policy through education and advocacy. The League is a nonpartisan organization and does not support or oppose any candidate or political party. League membership is open to all men and women. We invite you to support our work by becoming a member. Audience members may submit written questions for the candidates on index cards that the ushers are handing out. Please give your questions to the ushers. Election Day is Tuesday, November 8th. Polls open at 7 a.m. and close at 8 p.m. If you cannot vote at the polls on November 8th, contact your town clerk about voting absentee. Absentee ballot forms are in the lobby. A new option this election cycle is early voting. Please contact your town clerk to get hours and locations for early voting. The voter registration deadline for the general election is Tuesday, October 19th, today. Voter registration forms are in the lobby for anyone who wants to register today. Please silence your cell phones and other devices and do not take flash photographs. We are recording this forum for broadcast on local cable TV, Channel 8. The forum will also be on CCTV's website as video on demand. The League thanks CCTV and Lowell TV for all their help. Today, the forum will also be live streamed on Lowell Public Television and WCAP Radio. It will be videotaped and made available. This forum is co-sponsored by Lowell Votes, Lowell High School, and Lowell Education Television. Excuse me. I would like now to introduce Nancy Carapesa, our moderator, past president of the League of Women Voters, Massachusetts. And Nancy will bring on our candidates as well.
Thank you. I welcome especially all the students today as we get ready for the candidates debate between the candidates for 3rd Congressional District. I know it was mentioned about silencing your cell phones and pagers, but I also would like to remind the audience if you could be as quiet as possible so that we can hear as much as we can from the audience, or from the candidates. We have specific times where we'll give them cheers and applause. And we can do that actually right at the beginning now as we welcome the Democrat candidate for 3rd Congressional District, Nikki Tsongas. And the Republican candidate for Congress from the 3rd Congressional District, Ann Wofford. Welcome. The candidates have agreed to the following procedures and ground rules for today's debate. There will be 3 segments. In the first segment, each candidate will have up to 2 minutes for their opening statement. The order of these candidates' statements has been determined by a random drawing. And throughout the forum, I will attempt to continuously rotate the order of the candidates' responses. In the second segment, there is a time for question and answers. First, some prepared by the League from Lowell High School students and also Lowell Votes, and then written questions from the audience, as previously mentioned. So if you have a question on an index card or you just hold it up, there will be students collecting those signatures. The written questions are subject to a little screening for appropriateness and applicability to the office being sought, for clarity, brevity, and also in order to avoid duplication. The other thing is for handwriting or printing so that I can read it also. In the third segment, we will have the closing statements from each of the candidates, and again, a random drawing has established that order. So the candidates, as I say, will speak in order as they decide. And let me just make sure that the candidates can see the timers also. Right here in the front row, they will be holding up signs for 1 minute, 30 seconds, and then stop. For our opening statement, we will begin with Ann Wofford.
Thank you all for coming here today, for hosting this debate, for 980 WCAP, for broadcasting this debate live at 1 o'clock on a Wednesday, when a lot of folks are working in a normal business day and when a lot of our stay-at-home parents are beginning their afternoon routines with their younger children. So again, thank you all for coming and for this chance to go ahead and get out my message. But I do want to introduce myself and who I am to you first. Not everyone here knows a lot about me. I did grow up in Massachusetts. I can't say I was born here. My dad was serving during Vietnam at the time and got here when I was 4, as soon as I could. I grew up in a suburb of Springfield in the western part of the state. And I went on to Cornell University, where I majored in chemical engineering. And yes, I did work study and student loans and engineering co-op and everything I could to work my way through college. And then I went and I worked in private industry for 17 years. I have lived in Haverhill now for the past 12 years. And my husband and our wonderful daughters live there as well. And it's a great city, by the way. I do want to put a shout out to Haverhill. But we're here today to talk about the issues. And really it goes to one simple question. Are you better off today than you were 9 years ago when your incumbent congresswoman went to Washington, D.C.? How's income inequality? Is that better? Is it worse? How affordable is college? Is it better or is it worse? How's the wage stagnation, the lack of job opportunities? Are we safer and more secure in our country today? Are we safer and more secure around the globe? And as we sit here and we debate the issues, we need to keep that in mind. We're going to hear a lot of statistics, a lot of data, but we also know what we see in our own homes, in our own neighborhoods, and throughout this 3rd district. So thank you all again very much. I'm looking forward to an exciting forum here today.
And now an opening statement from Nikki Songus.
Well, I want to thank the League for hosting this. The League has been historically so important to fostering conversations around the choices we make in every election. Great to be here in Lowell High School with so many great students and so happy to see so many of you joining us today and to be here with Lowell Votes. You know, when I first sought this seat in 2007, it was because I understood the unique opportunity that resides in this seat to make a difference. And as I have been in Washington, I have sought to do that. When I sought this seat, I also understood that it had been 25 years since Massachusetts elected a woman to Congress, and we cannot win if we don't run. So I felt it was very important to run. And as I have been in Washington, I have sought to make a difference. So whether it's supporting manufacturing in the Merrimack Valley, home to the Industrial Revolution, where manufacturing is who we are, to understanding the role of the small businesses and the innovation that they develop. That innovation becomes a platform for growth, to keep our soldiers safe, and that means safe so that the issue of sexual assault is dealt with in the military, both female assault, male on female assaults, but also the unfortunate issue of male on male assaults. No one who goes to serve this country should have to fear harm from their very own. So I have a demonstrated track record of working with our communities, bringing resources to Lowell. We see the impact of federal funding all throughout this city. It's a strategic partnership, and I ask for your vote as I seek to go back to Washington to address the big problems we face, but also to continue to make a difference for this great city and the cities and towns throughout this district.
So we've given both the candidates an opening welcome by clapping. And now when we answer the questions, if we could refrain from any audience participation that way, that would be great. Write your questions instead. We'll begin with the first question on the economy to Representative Tsongas. What leverage would you use for the federal government to discourage the growth of income inequality?
Well, first I'd like to address the issue of where we have come, not just in the last 2 years, but under the Obama presidency. If you look at the fact that we had a 10% unemployment rate in Lowell in 2009, we now have an unemployment rate of 5.0. That's too much, but obviously we've cut it in half. In Fitchburg, which is at the western end of the district, the unemployment rate in 2009 was 10.5. It is now 5.2%. We were losing 800,000 jobs a month. And in the interim, in these last years, we have brought back 15 million jobs. And that is from the active partnership of the federal government in stopping the free fall that was the Great Recession and making the investments that we need to grow back and secure our future. Yes, there is more work to do, and it's something I take very seriously. So it's whether it's understanding the capacity and the need to invest in innovative companies so that we are creating jobs, good paying jobs, and then educating the workforce so that people can meet those jobs. We now have a workforce, jobs that go waiting. It means that we have not done enough to educate our young people to those jobs, good paying jobs. Supporting manufacturing. There are good lifetime jobs in this state. Advanced manufacturing and manufacturing in general has come back to the Commonwealth, and I've worked very hard to support that, especially with the jobs at New Balance. So we need to enact policies that make a difference, but we also need to be engaged on the ground, bringing resources to our communities and supporting the many great companies that we have here, and supporting all of you young people who are our future.
Ms. Wofford, the same question.
There are really two fronts to looking at this. The first is when we talk about the income inequality, in many ways this is the shrinking middle class. You know, as of June here in Massachusetts, foreclosure petitions had 28 months of straight increases. That's impacting the middle class. It's not impacting the elite in Washington, D.C. with a handful of homes, but it's impacting all of us here. And if we want to start to tackle income inequality, we need to stop sending the 1% to Washington, D.C., who don't understand what's going on here. They don't understand the importance of the fact that there are fewer people in the labor workforce today than in the late 1970s. And you have to keep in mind, in the late 1970s, not a lot of women were working. You have to also remember that here, during the current administration, while my opponent has been there, more than 2 million women have fallen into poverty during this time period. If we keep electing the same people, we will keep getting the same results. If you want to see how we're doing this, take a look at how our financial disclosures have been. During this election cycle, my opponent has spent almost $950,000 on this election cycle. And if you want to trace it, it's very hard because most of this is going to consultants, and this is how they hide the money and how they play the game and how they keep it in their circles. Our campaign has spent less than $20,000, and you'll see if you look at ours, signs, bumper stickers, it's very clear where our money is going. So again, if we want to stop the income inequality, part of it starts with who we're electing. No more of the legacies. We need new people. We need that new perspective. We need someone there who, when we did a videotape for Facebook in Bolton, it was in someone's house who bought it under foreclosure. where 2 of his neighbors were currently in foreclosure, where the person across the street had just bought their house in foreclosure. Thank you.
The next question will begin with Ms. Swafford. What 2 steps should Congress take to make post-secondary education affordable for all Americans, and how would you pay for these proposals?
Thank you very much for this question. I do appreciate this one. This is something that has come to my attention from the very beginning. We were talking about this 2 years ago, the skyrocketing cost of college. And 2 years ago, I said, you know what? Dumping more federal money into it isn't the answer. Because if you look at this, the more federal money that has gone into college tuition, the more the cost has gone up. So we need some transparency. Where is this money going? The other thing, too, is there are a lot of simple things we can change. You know, when I was getting signatures in Marlboro, I got this question about student loans, and these were from parents who are paying student loans, and many of you here are going to be having those, just like I did. When it changed the system and they got rid of the banks and it now goes through the government, say you have a $10,000 loan. $1,000 of it approximately could be a fee to the government, and your parents, though, are paying interest on $10,000. They're paying interest on a fee they paid, not a loan. I heard about this in almost every single city and town. This is a simple thing to fix, and it helps the middle class. You have more than one child in college, this makes a big difference. This is an easy bipartisan fix. The problem is our elites and our establishment in Washington, D.C. don't even know this is going on. This could have been stopped. So what we have to do is focus on the middle class. What are the challenges they are facing paying it? And before we dump any more money into the system, where is it going? If you have a college professor being paid over $360,000 to teach one course, we're not going to give more federal money. That's not the problem. Thank you guys very much.
Representative Tsongas.
Well, that's a very, very important question, because the capacity for all of you to go on to college and be prepared for the jobs that await you is very much dependent and wrapped up with the affordability of that education. And we see now the growing cost of that and the great debt burden that too many of you will have to absorb in order to pursue that education. We are fortunate to be home to some remarkable state institutions, whether it's Middlesex Community College, where I worked for 9 years and was happy to serve as a dean before making my way to Washington, D.C., but also we've seen the tremendous growth of UMass Lowell. So it means it's possible that you can come here, go to high school here, and make your way through college and on to graduate school without ever leaving the city, although I would encourage you to leave because there's so much to learn out there. And across the street you have a new dormitory that is going to be built for students seeking to come to Lowell to go to the university. But the issue of affordability is a real one. My husband was a United States congressman when he made his last student loan payment. So we have to support Senator Warren, who says you all should be able to refinance any loan you have, just as a homeowner can refinance their mortgage. Pell Grants are the federal way in which the federal government makes available support for students who meet income guidelines. And Secretary Clinton has proposed and has looked at working with Mr. Sanders, who both recognize the terrible burden on young people as they make their way into adulthood, ways to make the college cost of college, something that you can manage and navigate, and I strongly support that work.
Ms. Wofford.
And I just have a quick rebuttal here. I'd like to point out we're seeing a very basic philosophical difference here between the candidates. My opponent's solution is more government. My solution is less government. As I see it, the more the federal government has gotten involved, the more costs have gone up. So I am going to work to getting the federal government out of your ways for fulfilling your dreams and going ahead and getting that college education that you want to help make it affordable, because all the federal government has done is made it more expensive. Thank you. And
I see the federal government as a partner with you and with your families. so that we can provide the resources that are needed, and be sure that as you move forward that we have done what we can to be helpful, because the future of not only you depends on your ability to go on to college, but our future as a country. We live in a highly globalized, competitive economy, and we need you to be educated as best possible. Never think that vocational technical work is not appropriate as well, but where needed, higher education becomes very important, and we have to help you afford it and absorb those costs and make them something that you can sustain.
And the next question will begin with Representative Tsongas. Young people as a group feel disenchanted with our political system. What have you done to engage with young people during your campaigns? What would you do as a member of Congress to engage with young citizens?
Well, I welcome this opportunity. It's a great way to engage and make real who we are. It's not everybody, to meet a member of Congress or someone who seeks to be a member of Congress does not always happen as you're making your way through your daily life. I actually was just in Haverhill as well, meeting with young people who were in the government class there, and I believe Ms. Wofford also had that opportunity. So I seek out those opportunities to meet with young people. We have an internship program in which we offer the opportunity for young people to come into our office and learn what it is to be a member of Congress. I actually met my husband when he was an intern in the office of the then congressman who served this district, as I also was working in Washington, D.C. So I urge you to seek out those opportunities. And whenever I ask those young people who are working in our office, they are always sort of taken aback by how the conversations that exist between the member and our constituents. That is what we are obligated to do. So not only do I reach out to students, I create every opportunity I can for constituents to come to me through Congress on Your Corner. I go to communities, I let the community know I'm going to be there. That is where I learn about the issues that people are facing. And I use technology, teletown halls, I'm on Facebook, I'm on Twitter. I know that's the avenue in which young people like to sort of stay connected. I encourage you to take advantage of my Facebook and Twitter and let me know if we're doing it right or not. But I think we have to use all available resources to reach out to young people. And it's a meaningful way to spend your life. And I encourage you, if you have any thought of public service, to seek out opportunities to work in my office, but also look at ways to engage in your community. You will never regret a second of it.
Ms. Wofford, the same question.
Well, here, talking to everyone here at the high school is one way to engage, and I'm very happy we have this opportunity. And yes, several weeks ago, I spoke to the AP Government class in Haverhill High, where I live in Haverhill. Just last Friday evening, we were with the UMass Lowell College Republicans. It is the first year UMass Lowell has College Republicans. I am thrilled that they're organizing. And then even Friday morning, I'll be at the Groton Dunstable High School having a session with millennials, kind of carrying on what Senator Ryan Fatman, State Senator Ryan Fatman here has been doing. Really, my advice is internships, help with campaigns, but go work in the real world for a while. We have so many folks in government where all they've done is government, and they don't know how to solve the problems. I also say learn history. When we see people talking about Syria and the Middle East and Europe, I'm amazed at their lack of knowledge of history. Because if you don't understand the history, you're going to make the bad decisions, and history repeats itself. So I think my advice, if you want to get involved in the political system, right now, high school, college, do the interns, help out with the campaigns, your youth, your energy, that cannot be replaced, especially for all volunteer organizations like mine. But my real advice is to go out in the real world, make sure you learn history, and then when you feel like you've had enough things going on in the world where you want to go in and make a difference, that's the time to jump in, where you can come in and you've got those life experiences behind you. Thanks.
The next question will begin with Ms. Wofford, and this is from the audience, so if you have any questions that you want to send up, please do. What is your view on immigration issues?
This has been a very hot topic this election cycle, And first off, we are a nation of immigrants, and I support legal immigration. My own grandmother, County Mayo, Ireland, she came here through Ellis Island, which was set up for health reasons. I have a brother-in-law who legally immigrated to this country this century from Sri Lanka. I have another brother-in-law who did immigrate from this country legally as well from Iraq, and he did come in under refugee status. So I am all for legal immigration. What I am not for are sanctuary cities. 2 years ago, when I ran for this position, there were no sanctuary cities in the 3rd District. Today they are. And this is a problem. This is a real problem. I commend the Lowell police officers who just about a week ago arrested an illegal immigrant with drugs who was a resident of Lawrence in the sanctuary city. And he'd already been deported once, by the way, and come back. And they were able to get immigration involved. We have a real problem. Just a few weeks ago, in fact, in Haverhill at a park on a Friday evening, 2 illegal immigrants are accused of raping a woman. And of course, one had been deported and come back. One had been picked up at 17 and was considered a minor, and it's still a little hazy who did what. The different bureaucracies are tossing that one back and forth. We need to secure our border. We do. We're not a nation if we don't have a secure border. And it is very symbolic that for the first time ever, we have immigration, federal immigration folks working in that area supporting President Trump. It is a problem. My husband's family, he's from Texas, they're all in Texas. We have family in Brownsville, we have family in El Paso. There is an issue, and it's not being addressed. And if we really want to have a nation, we first secure our border in terms of what to do with the illegal immigrants in the country today. Until we secure the border, it doesn't matter. And I go back to Ronald Reagan in 1986. He gave amnesty, border was supposed to be secured, never happened. We need to secure the border, and once that's done, we can focus on the illegal immigrants here today. Thanks.
Representative Tsongas.
Well, this city especially, but the cities throughout the Merrimack Valley reflect the great tradition of immigration. If we think of this high school, there are 51 languages spoken here by people coming from 65 different countries. It is a remarkable melting pot of those coming from all across the globe, and it has enriched this community in invaluable ways. My husband was a first-generation Greek American. His father came over when he was 3 years old. And my husband, through his education here at the high school and on through college and law school, was able to run for the presidency of the United States. So that is the hope, the great hope of this country, and something that we deeply value and cherish, and are so enriched by here. But we do have a challenge, and we have to address it, and that is we need to move ahead and enact immigration reform that allows those 11 million people who are here to come out of the shadows, pay their fair share, and learn English, and be able to fully and openly participate in the life of this country. The United States Senate passed legislation that would have done just that. It was bipartisan legislation that recognized that this could not be an easy path, but that there had to be a path. We in the House of Representatives, our Republican-controlled Congress, has never allowed us to have that vote. So we Democrats held a sit-in on the floor of the House to draw attention to the fact that there is a solution. Just simply bring a vote to the floor of the House. Let those who support comprehensive immigration reform vote for it. Let those who don't support it vote against it. But let's let the American people know where each and every one of us stand. And I, for one, stand strongly in support of comprehensive immigration reform.
And a quick rebuttal. A lot of you, I met some folks who want to be engineers. You have to solve a problem, and it's a step-by-step process. Until the border is secure, our current immigration laws are enforced. We start using E-Verify. It doesn't matter. And one of the things Congress has showed us with Dodd-Frank, Affordable Care Act, all these other comprehensive things, is they don't know how to do it. We need to keep it simple, sustainable, and effective. And it starts by securing the border. Thanks.
When I was elected in 2007, I felt it was important to make a trip to the border. So I went to Arizona and I went to El Paso in Texas. And when we talk about the border, we're talking about something that would stretch from Lowell, Massachusetts to Denver, Colorado. So we are talking about a very expansive border. What I saw there was, yes, there are places in which there is a physical border, but more likely than not, we were using technology to secure the border, and much of that technology came from this district. So it was a job-creating source of ways in which we could best protect our border. I don't think it's feasible to think that we can build a wall. We need to use all the other resources. As a member of Congress, we've added 3,000 Border Patrol agents. As a member of Congress, we've authorized the National Guard to help secure it. But in the end, we need to implement and enact comprehensive immigration reform.
The next question, Representative Tsongas will begin. Do you think climate change is a serious threat to Massachusetts' future? What policies would you promote to address this?
I think climate change it's a serious threat, not just to Massachusetts, but to our country and our globe. I see it as a national security threat, and I have to say that as a member of the Armed Services Committee, the military shares that view. So not only do they invest resources in minimizing the impact of climate change and anticipating the impacts on national security, but they've also invested in a lot of research in ways in which to reuse water, have adaptive reuse water, not depend upon fossil fuels. So a whole host of ways in which they acknowledge climate change as a real issue for this country. I'm on the Federal Land Subcommittee, and that is a subcommittee that oversees all of our federal lands. And under the Obama administration, we have installed solar arrays and wind farms, recognizing that we have to begin to move from our dependence on fossil fuels, and we can only do that by investing in alternative energy sources. This district happens to be home to one of the largest clusters of clean energy companies throughout New England. So not only is it an imperative to the future of our climate, but it is a job-creating opportunity. We can help support all these innovative companies and all these great jobs that we need, and be part of positioning and protecting our country and our climate for the future.
Ms. Wofford.
When it comes to climate change, I do kind of come at this. Obviously, I want clean air. I want clean water. That is a priority. But we have to do the doable rather than the economically ruinous and socially destructive. And that is a quote from Charles Krauthammer. I look at the data as an engineer. The Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, or the IPCC, has stated that there has been no global warming since 1996. Do I think we need to be pumping a bunch of carbon dioxide into the air? No, I don't. But I also look at some of the regulations that have been put down by the federal government. They have killed the coal industry. So many people have lost their jobs. Our energy prices are going to go up as a direct result of this. But I do believe in protecting our climate. That's why I'm behind Sudbury as they're fighting those power lines above ground. They want them underground. I'm with them on that. We need to make sure that we don't do the social and economically ruinous, and that we protect our environment, but we protect our jobs. Because today in the 3rd District, the jobs, our economy, that is a greater threat to all of us.
No? Okay, we'll begin the next question with Ms. Wofford. How would you use less money from the government to solve our issues?
The first thing I would do is get rid of the Department of Education. We've had a lot of discussions about Common Core, and I'm opposed to Common Core. I believe it should be local and local control. And the thing is, what was kind of scary was somebody came up to me after and said, well, what's going to replace the Department of Education? And I said, nothing. I said, we're going to go to local and state control. We're going to let you have the curriculums you need for the jobs you have in your area. But see, the Democrat policy is one of dependency. So they want you dependent on the federal government. And what's sad is people are expecting a federal agency for everything. And we never had the Department of Education until Jimmy Carter. So there is one way, and in a controlled, systematic shutdown in about a 2-year period. I also say the Department of Energy. The Department of Energy is not really necessary. There is a permitting process, and that's why I have to say that. There is a permitting process I do believe we need to maintain, but that can easily be shifted to any other numerous agencies involved in that permitting process. So I actually say we can get rid of the Department of Energy as well. Controlled, systematic shutdown. The other thing I say is, when my opponent went into Washington, D.C., our national debt was only $7 trillion. We're almost at $20 trillion at this point in time. And we don't have a income problem, we have a spending problem. I will not be increasing like my opponent did every single time she had the chance to increase that national deficit. And I will make sure that our spending's in control. And it's a philosophical difference. It goes to the Republicans in the House of Representatives in a better way. And it's going to be zero-based budgeting, where we take a look at things every year. We don't just keep things on there from 1973. We take a look, and do we still need it? Thank you.
Representative Tsongas.
Well, as we spend our federal dollars, I think we have to think very carefully about how we do spend them and where they're going to have the most impact. So that obviously requires giving it all a lot of careful thought. We have been through very challenging times in which the federal government did make significant investments in order to protect our economy and keep us from going into a recession. But under the Obama presidency, the federal deficit, and that is the difference between how much you take in a year and how much you spend in a year, has been cut by 0.75%, and I have supported that. But the reality is we do have an accumulated debt, and that is the result of a number of factors, including among them, President Bush enacted tax cuts that he did not pay for. Under President Bush, we had a new entitlement program that has been beneficial, but it was not paid for. And we have engaged in 2 wars that were not paid for. So under President Obama, he is committed to having to pay for obligations that were already put in place. I have been a strong advocate for making appropriate cuts. Just recently, we had an opportunity to vote on a series of tax extenders. These are tax breaks that have a good intent. They support, for example, research and development, but they were not paid for, adding $680 billion to our debt, and I voted against it, as much as I would have liked to support all of those tax extenders, because they had, most of them had great value. I could see where they would make a difference in this Commonwealth as well as across the country. But until we find a way to pay for them, I could not support them. So I think we have to think broadly about how we invest the precious dollars we have. We just saw here in Lowell, Massachusetts, it received a Tiger grant. It's a grant, it's a transportation grant, very small, $13 million, but it will have a big impact on this city in improving transportation, improving public health, improving access to the university. That's a good expenditure of federal dollars.
Now, federal grants are important, and that is the minimum job requirement of your Congresswoman. That is something that, yes, Lowell has seen. Lowell will continue to see with me, but so will Haverhill, so will Fitchburg, and God, so will Gardner. They need some help in a big way right now. Now, in terms of the national debt, right now every taxpayer is on the hook for about $160,000. To keep kicking this can down the road and saying we'll deal with it later is the wrong way to do it. And if we look at history and economics, after President John Kennedy did the tax cut, some of the biggest economic growth in our history. After President Reagan did the tax cut, some of the biggest economic growth in our history. And our next president will be a President Trump, and we're going to have a tax cut, and that's going to help us with some of the economic growth as well. Thanks.
What this discussion leaves to the side is the many budget agreements that we have come together with, many written and prompted in consultation between the Republican leadership of the House of Representatives, the Republican leadership of the United States Senate, as well as the Democratic leadership working in concert with President Obama, that has put in place many significant cuts, leading to, as I said, the fact that we have reduced the federal deficit to 3/4 of gross domestic product in a very short period of time. That is significant progress. Do we have more to do? Yes, but we have to think very carefully about how we do it so we do not stabilize an economy that is on a growing path.
The next question, Representative Tsongas, will begin. What are your specific plans to reduce homelessness, fight the addiction crisis, and help individuals with mental health issues? How will you support nonprofits who struggle to provide all these services?
Well, these nonprofits are so integrated and integral to the healthy life of our communities, and we are fortunate to have some really wonderful ones here in Lowell, Massachusetts. Lowell House is a great one that works with those who are addicted. Megan's House, similarly. Community Teamwork, another great nonprofit that does such tremendous work. The opioid crisis in particular is one where, as I have listened to and learned from family members who have lost loved ones to addiction, where I have met with grandparents who are taking care of grandchildren because of their own children's addiction issues, where I have learned, and I think across this country we've learned, that there is so much, on a bipartisan basis, that there is so much work to be done. Just last week, I met with the task force here in Lowell that is led by District Attorney Marion Ryan. She had the Police Chief Taylor there. She had Lowell General Hospital, Lowell Community Health Center, all the different entities that have to play a part in this. In Washington, we have passed legislation that authorizes expenditure to help support what communities, and our state in particular, has done to lead the way. What we have to do when we get back to Washington is debate more broadly how much funding should go into it, because great programs have no legs unless they have funding behind them. So this is a real issue. Mental health as well. I've in particular worked on it in my work in the military, on the Armed Services Committee. The issue of suicide, a very grave one. We don't have enough data around suicide among military families or suicide on the National Guard. So in this year's bill, we have language to challenge the services to begin to collect data so we can really better understand how to help. And mental health among our returning soldiers is a great one. The signature injuries of these wars are traumatic brain injury and post-traumatic stress disorder that requires robust investment in mental health through our VA and through the active duty services.
Ms. Wofford.
This really is a crisis here in this district, and I think it's so significant because it's across all economic classes. There is not a part of this district that hasn't been touched. And one of the things I have said is, if we do secure our border, that will help stop the flow of the opioids into this country. That is a real benefit. But I have also said that we need to make sure we support local law enforcement, because what the police officers in Haverhill are dealing with is not the same as the police officers in Gardner or Marlboro. That 495 corridor between I-93 and I-95 has become a drop for the drugs coming in from New York City to the other northern New England states. They've done a lot with federal agencies to help stop that drug flow. But if we want to talk about the addiction and the recovery and how does the federal government help, the first thing is to don't put all these strings on the money that's coming. There are only 2 wet shelters in the state, and one of them is in Lawrence. And what a wet shelter means is that if you are high on drugs, they will take you in. Or if you're drunk on alcohol, but most of it is drugs, they will take you in. And what they try to do, it's not open during the day because they don't have funding. They're all out by 7:15 in the morning. Is they try to get as much help for that person as they're sending them out the door. This is a need in this community, and especially in Lawrence, and there's not the help they need, and it's because people don't even realize it exists. The other thing I've learned is when you look at some of the federal regulations, it hinders trying to help people recover. Pegasus House is only state funded, and that's in Lawrence, but it's a great program. They do so much wonderful work there. And one of the things I found out when I was visiting is sometimes the young women, when they leave there, they need to go to another location. They're not quite ready to go on their own. And there's SAS in Arlington, which has federal funding. They can't go there directly because of a HUD requirement where they have to be homeless for 7 days. That's not helping the process. So we need to remove the regulatory barriers and make sure the funding's in the district where it's needed.
I just wanted to add that Massachusetts, as it does in so many instances, has really led the way on the issue of opioid addiction. From the many parents that I met with, when I asked the question, what was sort of the gateway into addiction, invariably it came back to having been prescribed opioids for an injury. In some instances, a sports injury or some modest medical procedure. And so Massachusetts has led the way by really changing the prescribing habits of physicians physicians. And I think it's a very important first step to acknowledging the great, while opioids can in certain instances be useful in pain management, they have been misused in a way that has led and contributed to this very significant problem we have.
Okay. The next question, we'll begin with Ms. Wofford. Okay. According to the Social Security Administration, the Medicare Hospital Trust Fund will be depleted by 2028, and the Social Security Trust Fund will be depleted in 2034. Medicare and Social Security accounted for 41% of the federal expenditures in 2015. What reforms should Congress undertake in its next session to close the long-term financing shortfall of both programs?
This is an issue. The estimates from the Congressional Budget Office for 2016 are that we will have spent $660 billion on all health care services for those under 65. That's not even covering the folks that are on Medicare. When it comes to Social Security, the first thing I want to say is anyone who's on it is not going to be impacted one way or the other. That's not going to change. I'm 44. Folks that I say are 40 and over who've been putting into this system for a very long time, we will get what we put in. But a lot of this is how they manage the money in Washington, D.C., and this has to do with government bonds, and I don't believe we're actually going to run out. They're just going to shift the money around. What we need to, though, is with our newer generations, with the folks here in the audience, is shift how we're collecting that money. We need to do away with the payroll tax and actually take it out of a general tax fund. And this is because if you look at why Social Security started, it was an anti-poverty bill. It has become an income subsidy. And in order to, it did, by the way, it took, I remember my grandfather telling me how much this worked to help take so many elderly out of poverty. So we need to go back and treat it that way as one of those programs for our funding and our future funding. So that's one of the things, is how are we taking that money, how are we collecting it? And then if we want to talk about the Medicare costs, I think we first have to fix our other health care costs, such as the Affordable Care Act, of which it's estimated we'll spend $110 billion on in federal subsidies this year, before we can tackle Medicare. It has to be a step-by-step process to solve the problem, and it'll be a first things first.
Representative Tsongas.
Well, Medicare and Social Security are two critically important safety nets to those as people are getting older, and it provides them security in their senior years. And Mr. Ryan, the Speaker of the House, has proposed voucherizing Medicare, giving a voucher to someone who could then use it to purchase whatever medical assistance they might need. And there have been many discussions around Social Security and how to fundamentally alter it, neither of which I support. The reality is, probably half the population of this country depends on Social Security as the only source of income in their senior years. And we can never lose sight of that. And it is a very modest source of income, but it does keep people in some relatively secure place. You would be astonished in this city alone how many seniors really do live on a very small income, and it comes from Social Security. So as we talk about, and yes, it is true that we need to look at both of those very important programs, but we want to do it in a way that shores them up and secures them for the future and does not fundamentally alter them. As we've talked about the Affordable Care Act, one of the things that it did do because of its reforms, it did extend years to the Medicare program so that we do have more years to wrestle with how best to shore it up. But whatever we do, I will never support privatizing Social Security or turning Medicare into a voucher program.
Okay, that is the end of our question and answer period, if you can believe it. There were many, many questions not asked, and I would ask that the League, Lowell Votes, all the questions that I have, that the sponsoring organizations make sure that they get all these questions to the candidates, so in the next couple weeks you can continue to discuss them. So we'll begin now with our closing statements, and again, it was a random drawing, and our first speaker will be the Republican candidate, Ann Wofford.
Wanted to thank all the parties who helped host this debate here today, especially 980 WCAP for broadcasting this live. And it was nice to be able to talk about some of the issues here today facing the 3rd District. And again, you can always reach our campaign with any questions. Send us an email, give us a call. We do call back. This is a very important election. We see a lot about the presidential election, but it also is very important who we send to the House of Representatives, because our nation, it is at a crossroads. And it's about whether we remain a beacon of light to the world, a nation that's about freedom and equality, or are we a nation that is solely about the power of the federal government? My fundamental approach to the job is very different from my opponent. I look at how does the individual get to live their American dream? How do I break down those barriers that are preventing you from your full potential? My opponent puts up those barriers with big government regulations like the Affordable Care Act and Dodd-Frank. She puts up more and more wasteful government spending, and for the first time in our nation's history, the debt that has almost tripled since my opponent went into office will be passed to the next generation, and that's not a legacy anyone should want. I will work to tear down those walls and get the federal government out of your way. I will work towards securing our nation's borders and restoring law and order. I will work to get the economy moving again so there is upward mobility on the job and an end to wage stagnation. And I will always protect our Second Amendment rights. If we keep electing the same people, we will keep getting the same results. And it's time for Massachusetts to become part of a better way forward in the House of Representatives. It's time for a new perspective. I'm Ann Wofford, and I respectfully ask for your vote on November 8th. Thank you.
And now, a closing statement from Representative Tsongas.
Yes, thank you, and thank you again to Lowell High School, and I would be remiss if I didn't thank Brian Martin, your great headmaster, who's done so many good things for this school as well as for the city of Lowell. And as I said, when I sought this seat 9 years ago, I did it because I understood the opportunity to make a difference in the lives of the people that I represent. And as I have held this office, I have sought to do that in many ways. So whether it's working, as I said in my opening statement, about supporting manufacturing, because that is who we are, making sure that we're investing in new technologies through supporting innovative companies that have the ideas that become the platform for growth. Whether it's making sure that our military soldiers, those serving in defending our country, that they are safe and that they are both wearing the equipment that properly protects them, but they are also safe from each other, and they have a judicial system that treats them fairly. I've been able to do that because even as the Democrats have been in the minority, I have reached across the aisle and found those on the other side who shared my views and were willing to work together with me. Nowhere was that more apparent than on our effort to challenge the Department of Defense to issue American-made shoes to new recruits for those seeking to serve our country. And I worked with Congressman Poliquin, Congresswoman McSally from Arizona, a congressman from Michigan, and by coming together, we were able to make a change. We have big issues to address yet. We do have to close the income gap. We do have to address college affordability. We have to address the warming climate, but we cannot do that if we do it in isolation from one another. We need to work across the aisles to find common sense solutions that will keep this country great. It is a country that we all value. Those of you in this high school will prosper those from all over the country will prosper from having come here, and we have to make sure that your future is as bright as those who came before you, and I pledge to do that, and I ask for your vote, and thank you for the honor.
Before we close, there are a couple of brief announcements. I know there already was a mention about registering to vote. You can still vote or register to vote online until midnight tonight, and I believe there will be some forms also outside the auditorium. The other thing that is brand new, and this is the first time in Massachusetts, is early voting. So beginning next Monday, if you are able to go and cast your vote, you don't need to fill out an absentee ballot form or anything like that. You can go to your city or town clerk's office. I would ask you to check your local city or town to find out what times they are going to have these early voting. It's during their regular business hours, but many local cities and towns, the town clerks are opening at special times to encourage people to come ahead also. The League of Women Voters has long had a saying, democracy is not a spectator sport. Today, we especially thank all those who participated, the young ladies and gentlemen in the audience, again, also those who are maybe not so young. The high school students were wonderful, and thank you for all your great questions. I also have a special thank you to the timers, 2 Lowell High School students who were down in front. They have one of the hardest jobs in the room, let me tell you. But also, special thanks to Lowell High School and all it takes to put this together for hosting us today, the Lowell Educational Television, WACAP for the live broadcast today, and the other outlets who will be rebroadcasting this debate, and also to Lowell Votes. Most especially, one big last round of applause to for our candidates before Mr. Martin comes up for closing statements.
Thank you, Lowell High School students, and thank you to the staffs and our candidates. I wanted to remind everyone that the students need to stay, and they're going to continue with some discussion with their teachers. I believe the candidates are going to go to the lobby where they'll meet the media with their staffs. And I want to thank our Social Studies Department Chair Rob DeLosa, teacher Brian Scheckman for organizing all of this. Thank Dr. Kelfawi for being here. They did a lot of work with our kids. And our class officers and all the students that helped, as well as our general public. So thank you, everyone, and thank you to League of Women Voters and Lowell Votes. It was a terrific opportunity for our students, so I can't thank our candidates enough to share with our Lowell High School. So have a great afternoon. Thank you.